at this point, like, there's blame to go around from the top of the organization down to Patrick for why he hasn't developed. I think that it starts with, like, ownership, right? They want to win. They want to be competitive. So what mandate do they put on AK? You got to make the play, and you got to make the playoffs. You got to be competitive down the stretch. So what does that mean for Billy? He's got to play his best players. He's got to put his guys in the best position they can to succeed. And what does that mean? Giving DeMar and Zach the ball. And what does that do to Patrick? It puts him in the corner and waits, and, you know, he's got to wait for kick-out passes. That's not conducive to Patrick's development. But I think that's also on Patrick for not just, like, you know, going out there and being good enough to where he warrants not sitting in the corner, right? Like, it's on him to not get buried in the lineup, for him to be so good that you can't justify putting him in the corner. And he hasn't necessarily done that either. So, like I said, it's not just on any one person. I think there's blame to go around. But I do think long-term, the best chance for the Bulls to have, like, a higher ceiling is obviously for Patrick to really take a star jump. And whether we say that or not this year, who knows? But I do think it comes down to mindset. And I think it also is just, like, mostly this idea that Patrick has to be so good that you can't just leave him in the corner. And I think for him to be that good, he needs to just go out and get the ball and do it himself sometimes, because, you know, as much as Billy has kind of his hands tied with the way that this roster works and is constructed, as far as the offense that he can run, the spacing that he lets, or that guys like DeMar and Zach have to operate, like, he doesn't have a ton of options out there, but there's still blame on him too for not being able to put Patrick in actions on the second side, or, you know, with the second unit, to where he can really get reps on the ball, because I think it's going to be hard for him to really take a true step forward if he's just waiting for kick-out passes. So kind of a rambly answer, but I think Patrick needs to go out there and go get it, but the Bulls need to put him in a better position. And so far, none of those things have been true. And I think if that continues, if those things don't get addressed, we're just going to see more of the same, regardless of how much weight Patrick put on, or, you know, what percent of his body fat that he lost, or how good he feels about his summer. Like, it's not going to happen if the environment isn't right.
Yeah. Everything that Will just said right there boils back to the word that Matt saw, and the word that I definitely left out to me was mindset. That's what it is. So when you're talking about, you know, you want to go see him get the ball and, you know, take over and do those things, that's a mindset. When you see him, you know, DeMar and Zach on the floor and he goes, stands in the corner and waits, that's a mindset. Everything is about his mindset. We don't care about, you know, the shape that he's in. We know he's built like a house. You know what I'm saying? We understand that this dude is a monster. We see it. We understand it, and we like it. We're like, yeah, this dude is like that. So him giving sleeker, all that, great. You know, I call it the magical weight gain. Every year there's somebody who has the magical weight gain, puts on 15 pounds of muscle, and just does all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, here's the magical weight gain again. But nothing improves on their game. So, yeah, you just look awesome. You look in shape, but you're still the same basketball player. You just look better being the same basketball player. For me, like I said, it's the mindset. That's the one thing we've always complained about with Patrick Williams. We've never complained about his body, his body fat. We poke fun at him for his chicken parm and stuff like that, but we never talked about his shape. Everything was about his mindset, him wanting to go do those things, or him saying, screw that, I'm going to go do this. Like that, those are mindset, him taking the actual open shot. So that's the only thing that stood out to me in that, was seeing a change in his mindset and understanding what he needs to be. I think personally he's improved every single season since he's been here. I've seen a growth in him every single season. Of course, it's not the growth that I think he's going to, that we all want him to be. I should say it like that. We want him to be that guy. You know, that's what we want from him. But personally, I think I've seen that growth from him every single year. I've seen him take a step. They aren't the steps that you want to see people take, big old steps and gigantic steps to get to that point, especially him being the number 4 pick. I personally don't matter about the number 4 pick, but I get when people say that. It's a thing. You know what I mean? That's the onus that you put on yourself. It makes sense. So I don't, you know, go against people who use that point right there because it makes sense. But his mindset has to change. The one he has now is not conducive to him being a winning basketball player or a better basketball player. It's just not. It's for him being a simple, regular basketball player. We don't want simple and regular from Patrick Williams. We want some greatness from Patrick Williams because of the magical weight gain that we see and the skills that he has. We know how good this dude is, man. He has to know how good he is, and he has to show that on the floor.
I mean, along those similar lines and talking about mindset, Damon tends to agree with you, Dave, in the comments saying in order for P. Will to be more productive, he has to be more selfish on a team with 3 dominant offensive players whose games don't mesh. And that also kind of goes along with what you were saying a minute ago, Will, as far as who's getting touches on this team. Meanwhile, From the Rack disagrees with the mindset issue, saying it has nothing to do with mindset. It's roster construction. He's playing out of position. I feel like that point is a little too harped on by Bulls fans with the whole, like, is Pat a 3 or is he a 4 thing. I don't care. I think he could play either.
He is playing either.
He's playing either. He plays minutes at both positions. I think that's not the point. If you're talking about roster construction, I can agree with in order for him to get better and develop, roster construction needs to not have 3 guys who are all getting the bulk of shots and touches every single night. While, as you said, Will, Pat stands in the corner and maybe gets the ball his way and shoots a 3 if he's open. And other people in the comments agree with that, saying Golden Force says we won't get more out of Pat until he gets the ball in his hands more often. He stepped up on defense, no doubt. 3 ball dominant guys are going to make it harder for an offensive breakout. I think that's a significant part of this issue, but also the wanting to be selfish so that you can prove, hey, maybe we don't need all 3 of these guys in Chicago much longer if you give me my chance. But where is that line between Pat saying, if you give me my chance? We got somebody else in the comments saying, hey, man, he might be still just fighting Torrey Craig for minutes. And I don't think, as much as Bulls fans might hope that Torrey Craig is a helpful addition, do we want Torrey Craig to be solid on this team, or do we want Patrick Williams to develop into what we hoped he would be as a number 4 overall pick?
But that's what I'm talking about when I say, to not beat around the bush, their goal is not to develop Patrick Williams. It's to win now. And you can't do both of those things at the same time. You can develop him into a spot-up 3-point shooter and a, best wing defender, which is what they're trying to do. But that's the role he needs to play in order for them to win now. For him to, develop into the role that we want to see him in, he needs to have the ball in his hands. And that means coming off the bench, or it means moving one of the star players. But if that happens, then the team's going to get a lot worse. So you can't have it both ways. The Bulls can't have it both ways. They know this. That's why, as we've talked about, Billy has said multiple times that he's not going to just gift Patrick Williams a bunch of possessions playing pick and roll, because that's not what's best for the team. That's not helping the team win right now. So I think it's this larger picture issue that we've dealt with, that we've struggled to come to terms with, of what is the goal here? Are we playing to try to be a championship team? Are we playing for trying to develop our young players so that we can one day become a championship team? Because if it's not one of those two, you end up in the middle. And that's exactly where the Bulls are. They're in the middle, and they can't really get anything done because they're trying to do too many different things at once. And I think that's a realization that the Warriors had to come to this past year with Jordan Poole. I think they're coming onto that decision with Jonathan Kuminga as well. That's why they brought in Chris Paul, because you can't try to go for a championship and also build for the future at the same time. You have to be super lucky. The young guys have to be really good and be able to contribute now. It's just a really difficult thing to do. There's a reason why everybody compares you to the Kawhi Spurs, because they're the exception that makes the rule. Mm-hmm. They're the reason why people try to do that. But just because they did it doesn't mean it's replicable here. I think that's certainly true when you're looking at a team that doesn't move the ball the way that the Spurs did. So I think it's just going to be really difficult to do both of those things. I don't think that they necessarily want to do both of those things, because I think being competitive is the trump card. And until we see some changes with the roster, I just don't see any of that changing. But again, I think part of that's on Patrick too. Somebody said it's not the mindset thing, it's the roster construction. It's both of those. It's all of the above. And that's why like this whole path towards the middle and re-signing Vooch and having to run into the same thing next summer with DeMar is so curious to me. Not to say it's like wrong or right. I mean, this is the decision that they've gone to, and we can agree or disagree, but it is having the effect on Patrick that is making it difficult for him to develop.